Right. Hello, all. I'm hoping this has gone live. I'm trying something else this time um, from a technical standpoint, and I'm on my own today. So I'm not totally sure what I'm doing. And I'm not totally sure this has worked. But at the same time, I don't just want to stand here and stare at the camera and wait. So I shall be yapping slowly. Oh, lovely. Okay. We are live. So, while I wait for everyone to jump in, looks like there's absolutely no one here at the moment, but that's fine. So, while I wait for some people to jump in, I thought I would just run you up to speed with what's happening because I've not been particularly close on YouTube recently, and I've not been posting a great deal. And some of you might have wondered what's happened, although I've tried to be as consistent as I can. So, basically, it's been summer. I've been I've been doing other things but YouTube. So I started this channel in properly in September of 2024, and then nothing happened. Like nothing happened until around April 2025, and that's when all the subscribers started coming in. That's when everyone started watching the videos, and that's when it became my full time living. And from then until about 2 months ago, I did nothing else, which was really fun because I was in love with every part of being a content creator. But it's my first summer back in the UK. I'm with family. There are friends and things that I want to get up to. So I've just taken a little bit of a step back. I'm not going anywhere, and I'll get straight back to it in autumn. But yeah, I just took a little bit of time, not off, but just carved out a little bit of personal time again. Because I think to make good content, you need to constantly be inspired. And it's so hard to be inspired on the same subject all the time. So I've actually put down the history books for a little bit. And at the moment, I'm reading astrophysics. I don't know why. I don't have any education in science, but it's just something else to read. Anyway, autumn, winter, and spring are when you guys watch the most. So I'm back to it then. Um, as for the documentaries, the things I've sort of promoted and made you all wait a long time for. So as it stands, Japan episode 1 is on Patreon, is ready to watch. Episodes 2 and 3 are being produced right now, and then episode 4 come last. Once episode 2 is done, which hopefully will be within the month, episode 1 will be posted to YouTube. There's also a documentary you don't know about, 2 in fact. One I'm going to keep a secret, and you'll just enjoy it when it comes out. But it's not about history, it's actually about food. And one is coming out quite soon that I filmed in the north of England on the Pendle Witches. And we also have a guest appearance coming soon from one of our writers who happened to be in the area where Franz Ferdinand was assassinated. Now, I can see these questions coming in. Um, I'm very grateful to everyone who's tuned in so quickly. You guys are awesome. Before I start taking any questions, what I would like to ask you, those of you that are here, is if I left a link so that you could jump on the call and ask me a question directly, would any of you come? Or would you much rather just leave comments in the comment box? I know it's a lot to ask for people to come online. You have to show your face, but you don't have to come online and show your face. But if you want to just come and use your voice and ask me a question directly, you're more than welcome to. And if we get the chance, we'll have a little conversation. Um, I'll wait in the comments and see what you guys have to say about that. But in the meantime, let's try and find some questions. Would you do a video on the Stanford prison experiment? So I gave the Stanford prison experiment a passing mention in a video about Unit 731. And everyone came in the comments and said that that experiment was debunked and that a lot of the sort of scientific methodology was questionable. So I would have to make a video sort of saying that, and that's not very interesting compared to the results that we were originally given in the experiment, which was people just turn into monsters. So maybe I will, maybe I won't. Who knows? Okay, so it looks like you will. So I am going to ask all of you who are not tuning in live. Let me skip ahead a minute because I'm going to try and use my caveman brain to work this technology and see if I can find a way to invite people. I'm not technologically savvy at all. click the link to phone in, let's say. Phone in and ask me a question. And there's the link. Be respectful. Be good, please. I'm counting on you. I don't want to have to spoil the party and say if people are disrespectful, then I'll turn it off because I hate it. I'm an ex-teacher. I hate having to ruin the fun for everyone just because a few people can't behave, and I hate the thought that a few nasty people will ruin it for everyone. But I do have to look after myself and the channel's reputation, and so if anyone's getting too naughty, then we'll have to take that down. Um, uh, how many of vids we have guitar? I saw your post for the 6-string bass. I don't have a 6-string bass. I have a 5-string. And in many of the vids, we have mini guitars in the background. So what about that? So I was a musician before COVID, and it's a hobby that's never left me. I'm very glad I'm not a working musician anymore because that's not a very nice life. Lots and lots of unsociable hours, very poor pay. Well, it is quite fun. So since coming back to the UK, I came back here in December of 25. I have tried to make music something that I do more of and make more time for. So that's why I've got loads of bass guitars in the background. Recently found your channel, love your content. Great, thanks for watching. Panopticon we're slowly entering. I'm not sure what a panopticon is, so you might have to come in and see if you can tell me more live. Thanks, dude. Thank you for your hard work. Again, could we? I know that others will come in later, but please, I find it very difficult to do anything other than blush when these compliments come in, and I feel very self-indulgent when I read them out loud. But I'm also keen to make sure that those who type in get their response. So yeah, less of that, please, because you're embarrassing me. How often do you record content? So I used to do big batches. So I would like film 4 or 5 in a day, so that I would only have to film like 2 or 3 days a week. I definitely was able to record more when I did things that way, but I found that it's not the best way to produce quality content. And there are some days of the week where I wake up and I just dread it because I know I'm going to be in front of the camera and the light, which is really hot, for like 3 or 4 hours that day, which is a long time to work. When you're recording to the camera, it's not like other sort of small administrative jobs where you can have your podcast in the background, you can think about what you're going to have for dinner. You really have to give total attention to the camera and the read. So after a couple of hours, you're exhausted. So these days, I'm just recording one a day, and if I'm really falling behind, I might record two. And that way, the one I do, I can give all my energy to. And when I'm reading that script, I'm just excited to read it and excited to tell it the best way. And I'm not looking at the sort of word count, thinking, great, this one can be done, and then the others. Um, okay. So that's how often I film. Yes, it is evening for UK folks, as you all know, and good afternoon to all of my American viewers. Favorite period of history? I don't have one. I'm more interested in themes. My favorite theme is intellectual history, which pairs really nicely, of course, with the punishments, which is why a lot of you are here, because we want to know why those people were punishing people in those ways, just not what the punishments would have felt like or how gruesome they were, although I'm sure that's interesting to a lot of you. What really gives me a kick is the symbolism, the understanding of why they were doing those sort of things, what was going through their minds, because our ancestors weren't stupid, they just knew less. So that's what interests me most, is what were people in the past thinking about? What were they how did they imagine the world to be ordered? And I think that's why actually reading physics at the moment has been really interesting to me, because obviously I don't understand any of it, but it does totally change the way that you view the world when you see it through the lens of materialism, which our ancestors just didn't have access to. So the contrasts are always the most interesting part, I think. Worst way to die, boiled or burned? Burned is probably better, I want to say, because boiled can take a while. Um, some more messages. Have I ever done voice acting? I have not. What made you want to start a YouTube channel? Personal freedom. I had another business in video, but I wanted to do something that was more related to my old job as a history teacher. So I started YouTube. Next question. Do I write my own scripts? Not anymore. So when I started, I did, and I very quickly realized that if I wanted to continue making content at the quality I was turning it out at, I would need help. And I got a writer named John. He doesn't write all of the scripts, but he does write, I would say, the vast majority of them. John's a far better writer than me, at least I think he is. So John writes a lot of them now, but we meet a lot to talk about topics together, go through the scripts, and sort of make sure that we're on the same page. So creatively, I'm a lot less involved in the writing than I used to be. For a long time, I felt quite bad about that. Now I think I've come to accept that I'm a much better narrator than I am a writer. And what I used to like about my writing was that I could narrate it very easily because it was mine. I knew which words were coming next. I do still write some, but I write a lot less than I used to. Although the ones I do write now are really exciting. Um, um, so the ones I do write now, I get really excited about because it's pure passion. What books do you read to benefit your YouTube account? Depends what I plan to write slash read about, what topics I'm into. I just started reading The General and The President, I think it's called, which is a sort of dual biography of Harry Truman and Douglas. I always forget his second name. The not very good for someone who picked this book up earlier this year. Um, the guy who basically did Japan in, and then in Korea wanted to drop a bomb. I'm so annoyed that I can't remember his name. It's something Douglas or Douglas something. Interesting person. Do any of the stories you cover affect you mentally, or is there any area you have refrained from? So I try not to shy away from anything for the sake of it being too hard or too incorrect. But yes, I would say for a while I said no, I don't get bothered about talking about these things. But probably this summer I realized that with the state of the world now, some of the topics, especially around the Second World War and the 20th century sort of tragedy, it's a bit close to home these days, and so I do struggle. Yeah, I do struggle. Um, who's your favorite historical person? If I had to pick one, it would be George Orwell, but that's just off the top of my head right now. Ask me tomorrow, and it'll be Julius Caesar. Favorite philosopher and why? That would definitely be, without a question, and it would be the same answer every day, Thomas Hobbes, who wrote The Leviathan. This book is the first attempt to properly explain how governments work and what they're for, and the fact that politics are not natural to us in the way that Aristotle and previous thinkers thought, but instead are artificial. And the primary principle that causes people to organize under the law is fear of lawlessness. And I think that is a lesson that we forget all the time. Before I go on, yeah, shout out for John, definitely. Before I go on to read any more questions, I just want to make a note of the fact that there is a link in the description. Douglas MacArthur, thank you. There is a link in the description. Please click that link if you want to hop on and ask me a question. If some of you have tried but it's not worked, please let me know in the comments. Okay. Will there be an eclipse video you can make about our ancestors, like what they thought of it? Probably not. I tried to do a video on what our ancestors thought stars were, and that's one of my least watched videos, even though I found it really, really interesting. It seems that old scientific theories and old models for working out the physical world just don't seem to interest people that much, which is why I usually do horrors and World War II stuff. Um, okay. What historical punishment do you find most interesting? Interesting is not a word I would use for any of them. So I wouldn't say interesting, but there are some that I find especially terrifying. And the one I find most terrifying is flaying. You should do audiobooks. Maybe. I mean, it's a lot of words to read, and I'm not sure I have the thoroughness to go through it. Did you enjoy teaching? Um, Honestly, no. There were parts of being a teacher that I absolutely loved, don't get me wrong. But the business of teaching was exhausting, very long hours, very poor pay. Best job I ever had teaching was in Thailand, where the rules were slightly slacker And even then, I got a new boss after about a year and had to quit because she was cracking the whip. Understandably, I think, but I've always been quite lazy. Jody says she's posted a video on the community post. Jody, you're going to have to repost it here. Otherwise, I'm not going to be able to read it because I'm getting loads in. Have you thought about writing your own history-related books? No, I'm not a historian, and I would never pretend to be one. And I think to write something that serious, I would feel a bit like I had imposter syndrome. Actually, that is a lie. Actually, that's a complete lie because last year I was thinking about writing a book called Punished: A Brief History of Justice, but I've since realised that that's probably I'm probably a bit out of my depth trying to wade into that world. Link doesn't work. Says error. Okay. Maybe because it's a live stream. Let's see what happens. Okay, let me just see quickly again for all those who aren't watching live. I really apologize. This is bound to be extremely boring for you, but I'm going to see if I can invite guests, audience. Okay, right. Let's see if this works. Okay, so we're going to do that again. Again, deepest of apologies to those of you who are tech savvy and are probably banging your head against the camera now, waiting for me to get this sorted and thinking that it's unbelievably simple. To you it is, to me it's not. I am a caveman. Okay, let's get rid of this one and pin the correct one. All right, let's see what happens. If this doesn't work, I'm calling it a day, and I'm very sorry, but you won't get the chance to come in and talk with me. I've been advised this is a terrible idea as well. My partner said, don't do it. You don't know who's going to come on, but I trust you. Speaking of philosophers, would you like to make more content on them? I would, yeah. I think to talk about philosophy, not many people are that into it. You get a lot of sort of the YouTube clickbait philosophy, you know, this Aristotle quote or Aristotle's metaphysics is absolutely insane or something like that. Not particularly fun for me. I might do a sort of podcast with maybe one of the writers and we'll just talk about philosophers, particularly the history of political philosophy. But I can't make any promises because it really depends on what you guys want to watch. You guys really are the bosses at the end of the day. Your videos help me go to sleep. You have no idea how many times I get that. And okay, I've got my first guest. I'm just muting you for now. I will get to you, I promise. What was I just talking about? Yes, my videos help people go to sleep. Right. So I get this comment all the time. I try and take it as a complete compliment that you find me relaxing. And actually, it's very good for me and for YouTube analytics if you do watch them while you go to sleep, because it means you finish the whole video and hopefully get played more. So don't feel at all bad about putting them on while going to sleep. Okay, this is Phil, and Phil's going to jump in now and ask a question. I hope that is your name and I've not got it completely wrong.
No,
but how are you
it is
doing?
correct. But thanks a lot for your work. I just wanted to try if the link worked. So
okay,
I didn't have a
no
question
worries.
in mind. So, but it works apparently. Great.
And just before you start, guys, can you hear Phil? That would be the real test. Let's just wait and see what's happening. I'm just checking the chat, Phil. I'm just waiting for a yes or a no.
I'm talking. Can someone hear me?
Shorts McGee says, "What's up, homie? This person has been watching the channel for a long, long time. So indeed, what's up? Nice to see you in the comments." Okay, you can be heard. So, Phil, what was your question, dude?
No, I had no question. I was just the one who said the link doesn't work, and I wanted to try if it worked.
Okay.
Just to be helpful.
Fantastic.
Okay, good.
Cool. Where are you calling from?
I'm calling from Deutschland, but I'm Italian in origin. Hello.
Cool. All right. Thanks very much for calling in. Cheers, dude.
I'm dropping out.
Bye-bye. Okay, that was Phil, everybody, and he's been very, very helpful to us. So, If anyone else wants to jump on and respectfully ask a question, please feel free to hit that link. You'll come in. I'll immediately mute you, but eventually I'll let you have your turn once I've finished saying what I'm saying, or once the other person has finished their question or comment. Right, I'm still waiting for some more questions to come in on the line text as well. Again, for anyone who's watching post live, this isn't going to be a particularly interesting video. So yeah, look away now, because it's just going to be me answering random questions that you can't see. In the meantime, I've got a couple of questions earlier about my bass. So let's have a look at those. So lots of you have asked about the 5-string modern bass. First, I want to show you this P bass. This is a cheap Squier PJ setup bass that I got for about £300 new, because I had a gig to Depth 4 in Glasgow about a year ago. Maybe it was 2 years ago now, I can't remember. I really like this bass. I don't have an amp in here. I really like this bass. I think it's great. These basses have been produced this way since the 1950s. They've never changed. I would say something like 80% of all the records you've ever heard in your life, if they have a bass guitar on them, which most do, it's a P bass. So these are really interesting instruments in the history of music, and they've got a lovely sort of vintage growl to them. But I wanted a 5-string for a number of reasons. And so I got this Dingwall. It's still a P bass, but it has that 5th string. And the reason that the frets are sort of angled like this, if I put it this way, you'll see it better, is basically to make this top string longer and the bottom string shorter, because a lot of 5-string basses don't sound very good with this top string. It's too low, but extending the range of the string just gives it a bit more clarity. And so they're lovely 5-string basses, and this is the one I take to work whenever I have music business. It's a great bass. Okay. I missed my chance. No, you didn't. No, you can still use the link. Of course you can. Have I got the wrong link up? Oh, please don't say I've got the wrong one up. Phil, you're needed to click the newest link that's been pinned, or anyone else for that matter. Click that linked pin and tell me if it works or if it doesn't. If it doesn't work, I need to know, because I've pinned the wrong link. Nope, someone's in. Right. I've done my bass question. So Sleepy, whenever you're ready, feel free to unmute and shoot your question.
Hey, I've been commenting by the name. Yes, it's Clara. I also dropped off just like Phil did. And
Okay.
yeah, we really enjoy your work over here. And one thing I really like about you is the fact that you happen to cover most of the personality traits of the people you cover. I'm sorry I'm for speaking in a thick Indian accent, but then yeah, I guess you're able to understand me well enough.
I can understand you perfectly, and I'm glad that that's what you enjoy about the channel. I also really enjoy learning about people's sort of psychological foibles. It's quite an interesting part of history, isn't it? The people that are in it.
Yeah. Any other personalities that you're trying to cover anytime soon?
Who am I covering next? So I've got Emperor Nero, who's slightly less known for sort of, but that's for the Rome nerds. I've got Idi Amin, and I think Napoleon is coming up as well, because he's got some sort of freaky personality quirks. Is there anyone that you would like to recommend?
No, I would say I'm becoming a history nerd because of your channel, so I'm not the person to give you the right recommendations for this.
Fair enough. Well, that's like the best compliment you can give me. I'm really glad that you're getting into history.
Yeah, and I'll also give you this. Like growing up, I hated history all along my middle school, high school, and like after getting a job through your videos, I've been able to enjoy most of it. Yeah, it's mostly Western history for the part, not related to my geography in general. But then yeah, it's still very good, and I think I'd like to see more of that coming soon in the future.
There's always more to come. And I, like you, also did not like history at school. I dropped history as quickly as I could at about 14.
If only there were more history teachers like you, I guess.
That's very kind. Sleepy, did you click the link that was pinned, or did you click the link further up the chat?
The second one, like after you click the invite audience thing, I guess. The second one. Yeah.
Okay, lovely. Just for the sake of like double checking, can someone else in the audience, even if you don't want to say anything, please just click that pinned link so I can see you in the room and I know it's working for others. Sleepy, see you later. Thank you very much for calling
Yeah,
in.
yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Okay, would you incorporate another question here from Jody? Would you incorporate other disciplines into your work? I love this. I think interdisciplinary work is fantastic. So we try and do some psychological interdisciplinary work when we do those sort of character reviews, weird people from history. Obviously, it's a bit pop psychology, so it's not particularly rigorous. I really like putting the philosophical perspective into history because, again, that's my wheelhouse. That's what I studied. But I tend to find that if I lead with that, especially in the title and the theme, people get a bit bored. So I try and sort of push that towards the end of the script or as a sort of interesting segue and a talking point. But yes, I love doing that as much as I can. Will there be another Founding of Rome episode? No. The Founding of Rome episode was part of a bigger series called Caesar. And this was the chance, this episode was basically a chance to set up the stakes and introduce the character of Caesar. He's actually the last 3 words of that documentary, that episode, are Gaius Julius Caesar, and it's the only time in the episode that you hear them. So you have to wait half an hour until he's introduced. A lot of people have asked about the Caesar series. It is on the way. I want to write a little bit more of that before I hand it to John so that he can get an idea of the tone I'm after. And I just haven't had the chance to write it. I really want this to be good because Rome was what got me into history. So I don't want to rush it or sort of half-ass it just to get it out. I want to take a little bit of time, read a bit more, and write something really nice, and sort of set something up for the other writers to get involved with and get their teeth into. Does etymology interest you as a history buff? Yes, absolutely. And I'm also an enjoyer of the Instagram account Etymology Nerd. I would recommend it massively. Yeah, it's fantastic. And I think, honestly, if you look close at history, you almost can't help but end up dipping your toes into etymology anyway, especially if you're reading original texts. So, yes. What's my thoughts on the Ukraine war? I wouldn't be able to give you my entire thoughts without completely boring the audience and going off topic. So I'll have to give you the most blanket milquetoast statement, which is, I hope Ukraine can kick Russia out. And I think we should be doing more to help them. And I think people in the West forget, especially in Europe, that the only thing standing between them and Putin right now is Ukraine. And we should be throwing everything we can behind them. And all of this grumbling about how much money they ask for to fight that war, I think it should be the other way around, to be honest. I think the Ukrainians should be grumbling at us for not being grateful for the fact that they're the ones holding back a tyrannical bully. Come at me in the comments if you disagree with it. That's about all I'll say. Do I agree with the phrase, the bad thing about history is that we never learn from history? Yeah, I suppose I do. But the caveat I would make there is that it's very easy to draw the wrong lessons from history, and the past is not a sort of perfect replication of the events and the circumstances of the past. So you could say I am learning from history and then say something ridiculous like I've learned that the bad guys lost, the bad guys won the Second World War, and I've got the historical receipts to back that up. So it really depends on whether or not you have learned anything, I suppose. But I guess the fact that people are making that argument is proof that they haven't learned from history. So, I mean, who am I to say really what history is right and wrong? I'm not a historian, but I do my best to try and use reputable sources, and I think that's all you can say for any subject, really. What are you doing today, gents? Well, I'm here talking to you guys. A few more comments about that bass. Yes, it is a Dingwall 5-string. I did get the Dingwall Combustion series. I've got one in the other room with flat wound strings on it, but I missed my P bass. I really like the sound of a P bass. I think it's applicable to so many genres. Will I be doing a reading from A Christmas Carol this Christmas? I can't, unfortunately, because I think that book is copyrighted. I've tried to think about reading a lot of books to you, especially Eli Wiesel's Night, because the author's dead, but his estate means that it's still copyrighted for quite some time. So yeah, I would love to, but I can't. I might be able to read you some Shakespeare though. Okay, Nathan, welcome to the chat. How are you doing? I'll give you a few minutes to figure out how to unmute your mic, and I'll crack on with the next question. But afterwards, I'll check in with you again unless you're ready. Are you ready? They're not ready. They left. For once we're in the episode, X is far better than you thought. Yeah, so I actually did a video on medieval hygiene and why medieval hygiene is actually so much better than you thought. Because I think we have this stereotype of like peasants rolling around in mud with black teeth and shit under their fingernails, just sort of living like absolute pigs. And actually, medieval people took hygiene really seriously. They would disagree with us about what constituted clean and unclean, but that's true even today between cultures. For instance, whether or not you wash chicken is still like a really big talking point, right, between different communities. Some people think you shouldn't wash chicken because you'll end up spraying bacteria all over your kitchen. I'm in that camp. And other people think you should wash chicken because you don't know what's on it and you want to make sure you're eating something that's clean. Medieval hygiene is much the same, except, I mean, from a scientific position, their hygiene was worse, but it was nowhere near as bad as you think. For instance, halitosis, bad breath, was considered almost a bit of a public health problem. So if you had stinky breath and you were walking around with it, people would really be upset with you because they thought that that bad smell could potentially make them sick as well. Cleanliness is close to godliness, this constant washing of the hands, the association of water with purity. So no, medieval people were not at all pigs. They probably were a bit stinky compared to us, but certainly not as bad as you might have thought. Sleepy says, thanks for having me. Total pleasure to have you here. Again, if anyone else wants to come on and say hello, you are more than welcome. Why do I disagree with death penalty across the board, or do I think there are exceptions where it is appropriate? I do disagree with the death penalty across the board. I disagree with it for two reasons. The first is the fact that there is no humane way to kill someone. So all of the last sort of century of criminal justice systems reform with the death penalty have been an attempt to make it less gruesome, and each one of those has failed. The commonly agreed humane way now is the lethal injection, which is the most botched execution method by far, and the botchings are awful. It's really bad. Now, you might say, who cares? These people have done awful things. Does it really matter if 8% of them end up dying a horrifically awful death because of some technical failure in the procedure? It does when a significant proportion of them are innocent. And it's quite scary. Now, I might have this wrong, but I have a feeling that it was this number, that in some states such as Louisiana, 14% of those who had been killed by the state within a couple of years of their death had been found to be either properly not guilty, or new evidence had come to light that had been a mitigating factor, or that could potentially cast doubt over the fact that they were guilty. So, I mean, even if it's 5%, even if it's 2%, if 2 in 100 people are being murdered inhumanely, and they're not guilty of a crime, I can't see how you can think that the death penalty is acceptable. I understand the other side of the argument, though, which is that it's a bit naff, isn't it, if someone does something absolutely awful, and the worst thing the state can do is put them in prison, basically put them in time out for the rest of their lives at the taxpayer's expense. That doesn't seem like justice either. And the other good argument for the death penalty is, of course, the deterrence argument, although I think a lot of research and a lot of criminologists now believe that there isn't really a tangible link between the death penalty and crime. And the two examples I'd give you are Japan and the US. So the US has terrible crime statistics and does use the death penalty, even in death penalty states. There's no real correlation either, as far as I'm aware, between all of the death penalty states and all of the non-death penalty states as to whether or not the crime rates fall or drop. And then you've got Japan, which does use the death penalty and has a near zero crime rate. So my feeling is that it's less to do with the deterrence of capital punishment and more to do with other factors, and that might be where we need to look if we want to reduce crime. So that's my 5 minutes on the death penalty. Okay, someone's got a question related to geopolitics but hasn't asked it. So Kezia, is Protest the Heroes' best album? Yes or yes? I'm sorry, Schmenk, but I'm gonna say Fortress. Although I really like Heretics and Killers. So I mean, it's definitely not Volition, is it? So Kezia's up there. Kezia's my second favorite, and it's what got me into them, but I think Fortress might be the better album. You should do a deep dive video into the Eisendsgrappen. Yes, I definitely should. And I probably will. So thanks for the tip. Yeah, I would love to do more on the Eisendsgrappen. Dustin Derrick, do you ever play a bass 6? For those who don't know, the bass 6 looks exactly like a guitar and is tuned like one, but an octave down. And yes, I actually have one, and it's great, but I very rarely find the circumstances to use it. Do I give any credence to the idea of Tartaria or Tartaria? No, not really. Don't know much about it, but everyone I've ever heard talking about it is a nutter. Someone's calling in at 5:40 a.m. Are you in East Asia? Where is it 5:40 a.m.? Hawaii, maybe? Can't be the US at this time. I remember when you talked about this at Pints at Knowledge. So we have someone in the chat who actually came to hear me do a lecture live. I'm not sure what I was talking about and what he's referring to, but I do remember you because you're the only one who came, and it's very nice to see you, Jamie. I hope you're doing well, and I hope your shift that evening wasn't too bad. Trying to find more questions here. Again, for those of you who are tuned in, if you want to click that link, you can call in and ask me a question. I don't bite. Come on, be friendly. It'll be it's lovely to see you and to hear from you. You don't have to show your face. You can just hide the camera. My description of decimation under Crassus differs from every other source I've read or heard. Which sources did I use? I don't know. I made that video nearly a year ago, and John wrote that. So I'm sorry, but I don't actually have the information to you right now. John usually reads primary sources and then some other articles online from historical sort of websites and papers. So that would be my best bet to sort of point you in the right direction, but I really don't know. We've got some more on the death penalty. So let's go for it. The death penalty isn't a deterrent, it's social justice. I mean, this is the argument that I originally made, right? And it's the one that I think is most powerful for the death penalty, right? The deterrent stuff, I think we can discount that. The evidence doesn't really line up with the argument. But the social justice argument, that's definitely effective, right? The state should be able to do bad things to bad people because that's what justice should be about. What I would put to you is that a lot of those people are innocent and that the execution isn't always humane. Sometimes fits what I would define, I think what anyone would define as torture. Are you willing to potentially torture innocent people just to get some bad people? If you are, I mean, I'm not going to tell you to re-examine your moral compass, but I would be re-examining mine. If I could go back in time and take out Hitler, would I? Probably not. I mean, actually, I would like to, but I would be really scared about messing up the timeline. I mean, who knows how much worse? I mean, could they get any worse? Putting aside the sort of sci-fi questions of timeline changes and so on and so forth, if it meant that Germany was just going to crack on and there wasn't going to be any Nazism at all, I probably would. Yeah, I think I'd have to. Yeah, you're going to have to, aren't you, really? And just pray that, there isn't some sort of mega Hitler waiting in the shadows that was going to sort of take his job and do it better than him. I mean, the good thing about Hitler was that he was so incompetent towards the end of the war that he really did speed it up. And if Hitler had been more reasonable, less high, and had more trust in his generals, that war would have gone on for a lot longer. If he hadn't invaded Russia, he might have kept his stranglehold on Western Europe. So it's hard to say, isn't it? I know that towards the end of the war, the Allies stopped trying to assassinate Hitler because they loved the fact that someone so incompetent was in charge, and if anyone else came in and knew what they were doing, the war might go on even longer. Changing history is never a good idea. Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say, isn't it? Love the Henry VIII video again. Thank you. Don't overthink it. Some people just deserve to die. Yeah, they do. I'm not saying they don't. If someone had done, I don't want to name the crimes, but if someone had done, I think we all know what we're thinking of, something that bad, yeah, my instinct would be that the thought of paying for them to be in prison for the rest of their life would bother me. But there's always the chance they didn't do it, and at that point, I think at least if you put them in prison, you could, like, if evidence comes up that they didn't do it, you could always take them back out. So that's where I'd go. A nutter is so British. It is British. I know. Just going to say it again. If you want to talk to me, hit the link. I'm there. I'll be waiting. Hello from Sweden. Hello from Sweden. Oh, hello from England, I suppose you're saying. I'm going to my second year of uni in a month. Do you have any tips? Do you have any tips you would recommend to anyone going to uni? Study, basically. Try and enjoy the subject that you chose. I was quite fortunate in that I got kind of kicked out of my A levels, so I had to then study to go back to university. So by the time I got to uni, I think I was 22 or 23. So I was already 5 years older than my peers. But I had chosen my subject. So I really wanted to be in every lecture, and I really enjoyed it. And I think when you study that young, sometimes you just pick what you had to pick at school, and you pick the thing that you didn't like the least, if that makes sense. The thing that you hated the least. But yeah, you will never have the opportunity again to have no responsibilities other than to learn. So please enjoy it. And if you don't like the subject that you picked, use the time to study something else alongside it, as long as it doesn't affect your grades. This is the only time in your life where, unless you're very fortunate, wink, wink, like I am, this is the only time in your life where you'll get paid purely to play with ideas and theories. And that's what I love. So that would be my advice to you. If you don't like that advice, I don't have any others other than try and get some good grades. Favorite book? Don't have one. Yeah, don't have one. Too many to pick from. I like Watchmen, which is a graphic novel. I'd recommend that to anyone to read, but I think the only reason that comes to mind is because I don't read many graphic novels. So straight away, it's like the best thing in that genre. I guess for books, assuming you've read nothing before in your life, read George Orwell's 1984. If you've read that, read Down and Out in Paris and London by the same author. Fantastic read. What particular period of history am I interested in? I've already done this. Sorry, but it's not a period, it's a theme, and that's intellectual history. Social justice, again, we're back on the death penalty. The social justice argument is 100% valid. I agree with you because you say, as long as you know the person is guilty. It is a fine line that's very hard to know. Until you can know, I think your hands are tied. You can't do it. Okay, do I find the hideous violence we see in history hard to comprehend, and does it make you pessimistic about our species? So, I'm naturally optimistic about people. I think people are doing their best and trying. So, for those who don't know, there's a by-election in Clacton at the moment, and I don't live in Clacton, but I'm not far. So there's a lot of people from a party that I don't like going around handing out pamphlets and trying to get me to vote for them. And I don't hate these people, but I hate what they believe. And I think that they're genuinely trying to make the world a better place. They're just wrong. So in that sense, I'm quite optimistic. And even when we're doing our worst things, most of the time, we're doing them for reasons that we think are good. Or we're doing them because we feel like we have no other option. But that's also the terrifying thing about history, is that people can do awful things in the belief that they're doing the right thing. And yeah, I'm pretty pessimistic about that. I think that we might be heading towards some of those times now where people are convinced they're helping the world, and in fact, they're very much harming it. But I'm sure people on the other side of the debate would say the exact same thing. So, usual throwaway milquetoast comment there. Nothing interesting, really. As for the first part of your question, do I find the hideous violence hard to comprehend? Not typically, no. Because, like I say, although I'm relatively optimistic about human nature, I think that once we are creative as a species, so it's not hard for us to find interesting ways of doing something. And once we're convinced that harm can be a virtue, we're capable of anything. So I don't find that hard to comprehend. The one thing that's happened in history that I find utterly incomprehensible, though, is the Nanjing massacre. And I've spoken about this in other Q&As, because there's this feeling whenever you read about it, whenever you think about it, that you just can't understand where it came from. So if you look at the Holocaust, for instance, which was obviously a far larger, far longer lasting crime, you can see in the literature of Nazi ethics why you might do that. I profoundly disagree with it. I think it's absolutely crazy. But at least there is a rationale, even in the most twisted possible sense of the word. At Nanjing, there's nothing. You can't find a single reason, a single explanation. It wasn't racism, as is often said, because Japan only really, they were awful everywhere, but they only really they plumbed those depths there. It just seemed like pure, almost pornographic hatred. And I spent a long time wondering where that came from. And I wonder sometimes, that wasn't that long ago, So that's the one I find hard to comprehend. It will be in the Japan documentary in episode 2 as well. I try and ponder these questions in a bit more depth. All the things I've made videos on, which one personally shocked me the most? Again, I'll have to say the Nanjing massacre, because we've just covered it. It didn't shock me at the time of reading it and of producing it, but the more I thought about it, the more I was just like, where did that come from? Why would people do that? Yeah. Trying to find another question. You got, sorry, been yapping for ages. Okay, Grafting Lad asks for a third time. Do I see any historical similarities between the 1930s and the 2020s in terms of the possibility of a large-scale conflict? Yes, absolutely. I think that my answer is quite convoluted, so I'll try and keep it as brief as possible. But I think that the same institutional collapses that characterized the outbreak of the Second World War are present today. What I don't see is the same ideological drift. For instance, in the Second World War, I think you could say it was a sort of three-way fight between communism, fascism, and liberal democracy, where two sides ganged up against the other for good reason. Ganged up makes it sound like they were doing something bad. They weren't. So that's not present today. So I think it's that Second World War similarity of the collapse of institutions, of a sort of international suspicion, hostilities, grievances over the past, looking at Russia. But I think that the nature of the Third World War, should it kick off, will be a lot closer to the First World War, where it's sort of tangled around loose networks of alliances, a sort of purely material competition in a new age of sort of empires, a new great game. That is my fear. I do worry about that. What state do I live in? I don't live in any state. I live in the UK, so I can't answer that. Big up Count Binface, indeed. Yeah, a quote there from Dr. Alan Grant to sort of more or less mirror what I said, which is that some of the worst things in history were done with the best intentions. And I guess it's a similar quote to, what is it? The road to hell is paved with good intentions. Do I have any helping words for a somewhat really hopeless pessimist? No, I don't think I do. None that, when I'm feeling pessimistic, these words certainly wouldn't be enough to bring me round. What I would say is that if you are feeling pessimistic and hopeless, then chances are it's because you care and you've noticed that there's something in the world that's not arranged to your liking. And the wonderful thing about humans is that we can make these moral judgments. And provided that you are absolutely certain that you are doing the right thing and that you have taken the proper work to ensure that you are doing the right thing, you do have some capacity to change it. Of course, sometimes history just happens to you and people are powerless in the face of it. But you still have control over your reaction to these events. And to some extent, you have control over how you may help or hinder others. Choose who you help and who you hinder wisely. That's my best advice. Do I think the Nazis genuinely believe they were right? Or do you think beneath everything, they did have the self awareness that they were depraved and evil? I think that some Nazis definitely thought that they were right. Some Nazis were proper ideological zealots. Some Nazis were opportunists who realized that this was a sort of authoritarian power system, and if you said the right things, you could get nice things. And some were just soldiers who decided to put their moral principles on hold for the sake of convenience or safety. Um, I think that probably sums up the Nazi Party in general. I think it was a group of Einsatzgruppen, or it might have been military police, who were older gentlemen during the gentlemen might be the word. They were older men during that sort of punch into Poland, and they some of them didn't want to get involved in the killing of civilians, but did anyway, because it's an awful thing to do. And if all your comrades are being forced to do it, being told to follow the orders, then it's all well and good saying, I'm not going to get involved with that. But that means that your mate has got to do one more of the most awful things you can imagine doing. So even if you disagreed fundamentally with what the Nazis were doing, out of consideration for your friends, you might still find yourself doing these unthinkable things. And I think that's what makes history so scary. And especially the history of the Second World War, is that it doesn't really matter whether or not you fully buy into the Nazi idea. As long as you do what they tell you to do, you're enacting that party's will. I couldn't say for every German, obviously, or any person, but I do think that a fair few of the high-ranking Nazis were proper Nazis, and they believed every word of it. Interesting, I'm not sure Goebbels did, who more or less gave them all the words to say. I think he was far too intelligent to be a real intellectual Nazi, although he might have held some Nazi beliefs. But his ability to play with ideas, to sort of drop and pick up things as he pleased, to change how he thought and spoke about the world, on whether or not it would make Hitler happy, shows that he didn't have strong ideological convictions in the same way that I think Hitler did. But it's a very interesting question. How much of their own sort of Kool-Aid were they drinking? It's not a coincidence that community and goodwill in general has declined since the abolition of capital and corporal punishment in the UK. Well, it is a coincidence, because other factors have changed since the abolition of capital punishment. Things that I think have degraded how trusting we are as a society, and how accountable you might be for crimes. Now, of course, you're not accountable in the sense that you're going to be hung or hanged, but you are less accountable because people are more anonymous now. I think that's got a lot more to do with rising crime rates, than pure punishment. Isn't it a myth that slaveholders ever thought it was morally justifiable? In reality, they ideologically prevaricated to justify economic motives. I mean, who doesn't, right? If you eat meat, for instance, or you wear cheap clothes made in sweatshops, you are doing something wrong. But most people would, I think, feel quite comfortable brushing it off because of circumstance, i.e., I don't get enough protein when I don't eat meat, or I can't afford the nice clothes, but I still need to look presentable, etc., etc., etc. So I think slave owners were of a similar grain, that they knew it was bad in the sense that they could do other things and that it was probably best avoided, but they found it more convenient to be slave owners than to take these moral positions seriously. I I hesitate to think that there were people in our past who had absolutely no qualms about it, and thought that it was absolutely like good. So not just like part of the kind of natural order of the world, but actually a net good. Um, Maybe those people existed. That would be so incredibly depressing if that was true. Uh, what name would you give to the collective philosophy of the modern Western world? A big question. I'm not sure I could give one, but I would say that it's a sort of blend of Christianity. I think if you had to sum up the Western world in three themes, it would be Christian ethics, Roman law, Greek logic. That's basically all it comes down to. Um, that's not particularly helpful if you're not familiar with those things. And I say this as a functional atheist who disagrees with most of the Greek philosophers and thought Roman law sucked. But that's where it all comes from. That those are the sort of three defining intellectual pillars of Western culture, in my opinion. Do I play any video games, particularly story-driven single players? No, although I did enjoy Ghost of Tsushima a couple of years ago. While I find the next question, please don't forget, any of those who are tuned in, that there is a link pinned in the chat. And if you click that link, you'll find yourself in this call where you can ask me a question. You don't need to show your face. You can just ask me via audio. I don't bite. Would I consider doing a pub or a small venue tour? I would love to do that. I think that would be really, really fun. And I see all the numbers on YouTube, and it's not as exciting now as it was when I first started. Seeing that first 100,000 subscribers, it felt amazing. But now it's at 450,000. I can't even really picture what 450,000 people look like in are those stadiums big enough to hold 500,000 people? Surely not. Anyway, I can't picture that many people, so it's absolutely incredible. But it doesn't mean anything to me realistically, because I've only ever met one of you, I think, out and about. So yeah, I'd definitely love to go out, sink a few pints, and shake some hands. That would be fantastic. Whether or not I could pull that off economically, about one per pub, I don't think I'd manage. But in an ideal world, that would be amazing. Any current or popular event you're particularly interested in? Doesn't need to be geopolitical. I really am only interested in politics at the moment, other than reading some science. But that's not really a modern event, is it? Ever thought about starting a podcast? Yep, and there are some podcast episodes on this channel. I'm just struggling to find a format that works for me. Would you say the same on the same point? Would I say the same for the civilian population of Germany? Do you think they knew about the Holocaust? Not a question I've spent much time looking at. I know that when General Patton liberated one of the camps, he forced the German civilians in the neighboring villages to go around and walk around those camps and see what had happened in their name. And a lot of the surviving Jews said that they definitely knew. There's no way you couldn't have known. I think it really depends on how close to the camps you were, and how sort of how secure German intelligence was within those who worked in and for the camps. Did the average person know? Honestly, without any research, I couldn't tell you. My gut instinct was they might have had an idea something was going on. But remember, they had a war on. They were probably more worried about getting bombed than these sort of rumors that couldn't really be substantiated. And remember, if you were spreading these kind of rumors in Germany, I imagine it wouldn't end particularly well for you. So the short answer is don't know. The long answer is, if I had to guess, maybe some would have known. Am I sat in my iron cupboard? No, I'm sat in my bedroom. It's the only place I have a desk and a strong internet connection at the moment. Let's see. When can we see the rest of the Flashback History team joining in? No idea. It's up to them when they choose to show their faces. And I don't really think you can ask others to step in front of the camera and put themselves out there, especially with how unkind people on the internet can be. I know that John has just finished shooting a video about Franz Ferdinand, and so he might turn up on screen at some point. But as for the rest, I really couldn't say. It's up to them, and it's not something I really want to put on their desk in case they feel like I'm saying, would you like to come on the channel for a Q&A? It might sound a lot like you're coming on the channel for a Q&A. Do you know what I mean? So I'll leave that up to them. I'm an American, but I've been to the UK and Ireland is light years better. I've only been to Northern Ireland, so I'll have to take your word for it. How old am I? I am 30, and I'll be 31 next month, which is crazy. I don't feel 30. Although I guess I am, really, because I see most people my age, and I feel old compared to them. I don't like the things that they like, and I'm not interested in the things they're interested in. So yeah, I'm 30. Jesus. As someone who's heavily tattooed, like myself, what was the most painful place you've gotten inked? Chest. Chest, without a shadow of a doubt. I always think people who say tattoos don't hurt are lying, trying to seem harder than they actually are. Tattoos hurt, right? It was what it is. It's not unbearable. It's not terribly, painful, but there is a certain element of discomfort involved. Chest, though, chest really hurt. I did not enjoy a single moment of that, and I was very pleased when it was over. Next question. So I'm seeing a lot about this pub tour. I don't think I will be doing a pub tour as much as you guys would like to organize in it. But every now and again, I try and do a show in London with a sort of company or event organizers called Pints of Knowledge. Next time I'm doing a talk in London, I will post it so that you guys, if you're interested and able to come, can turn up and say hello. And if you come, I'll get you a pint. How about that? If I am political, where would I place myself politically? I would have been considered 10 or 15 years ago a centrist. Nowadays, I suppose, compared to where politics are sliding to, you'd say I'm on the left. But I by no means consider myself a Marxist or a sort of a socialist. It's more that I believe in the market system as a way of distributing resources efficiently. But I think that the market can produce unbelievable concentrations of wealth, which can be used to pervert the equal playing field that markets rely on to be efficient. So that would put me somewhere in the left, I suppose, in that I believe the market needs corrections. But I'm less interested in that sort of left versus right debate about economics. On social issues, I'm pretty far left. I think that the US in particular and parts of the UK are openly flirting with fascism. And I think it's pretty terrifying. And I do meet people who are further to the left of me, and they do sound pretty mental sometimes. And I'm a bit confused about some of the things that they say and think. But in general, I feel like politics has moved so far to the right that you almost by definition left now if you're a sort of sensible centrist or dad, what do you call it? Politics dad. I like the rest is politics. That's me basically in a nutshell. Very boring, bland politics with an emphasis on things like the rule of law and distribution of powers and parliamentary procedure and all that stuff. That's what allows our society to run cleanly and efficiently, and it's what means you won't go to prison for nothing, and long may those days last. Have I ever seen the series of Protect and Survive, the nuclear war survival video? Yes, I have, and I've also read the booklet for a video, and it's creepy. The thing that I found most terrifying about the Protect and Survive series was the music that they used between each sort of comment or section. I thought it was actually a really terrifying sound, and I'm guessing they used that on purpose to get people to pay attention. But I can't imagine what that would be like today, and what sounds they might have to scare us with to make sure we sit up and listen. What's my favorite joke? Don't have one. Mini tattoo tour. Done it before. You've seen enough of my my tats. And on tats, the same man who asked says that the upper thigh was the worst bit for him. I haven't had my legs tattoos, so I'll take your word for it. But yeah, I can't imagine I would volunteer that area. How did I get so handsome? Lots of meat and vegetables, I suppose. I'm not entirely sure. I am trying to lose weight at the moment. I used to lift a fair amount of weights maybe 2 or 3 years ago, and then I started the YouTube channel and another business and kind of just let the health totally slide. So I'm back to counting calories and lifting weights. So hopefully I'll be even more handsome soon. I went to someone asks what university I went to, and I went to the University of Essex. I don't want to ask specifics due to privacy, but what county are you from? I've mentioned it. I am not from Clacton, but I'm in that constituency, and that's as much as I'm going to give you. Do I have an opinion on Israel's war? So, yes and no. I'm not an expert on the Middle East. I don't know a great deal about it, and I know that Israel is a particularly toxic issue to sort of wade into, with lots of very strong voices on either side. But to me, I don't know what's happening right now, but to me, what's happened over the last year and a half, 2 years, it might be longer. Again, I'm really sorry. It doesn't look good for Israel. I'll say that much. It looks pretty horrendous. And once it becomes actually history, we'll cover it. But while it remains politics that I'm unaware of, and to be honest, a bit scared of wading into, I'm not going to say any more than that. But yes, I don't think you can look at what's happening there, or at least what's happened there over the last 2 years, and feel anything other than horror. Whatever else may be said about Israel's security concerns and Hamas's attack. Would I vote for Count Binface? Not would I will. So there's that. I've just lost my oh no, I'm back. Next question. Sorry, guys. I've accidentally scrolled away from my place in the chat, so I'm trying to find the next question. The last one was Binface. Thoughts on Nigel Farage versus Count Binface? Why not? We're in here. We've already done some politics. Let's break the ice. So, for those who don't live in the UK, we have a populist right party called Reform, which is led by a man named Nigel Farage. Nigel Farage took £5 million from a sort of crypto mogul based in Thailand who is English. Now, this £5 million was not declared, and so it looks a lot like this crypto billionaire gave him some money for what could potentially be political favors down the line. That's illegal. And so Farage was to be pulled in front of a parliamentary inquiry or commission to determine whether or not he had broken the law or broken the rules. Instead of attending this commission, Farage resigned and triggered a by-election, which he himself is now standing in the hopes that he can go to the parliamentary commission and say, look, whatever you want to say about me, the people of my constituency have voted to re-elect me, even on the basis of this accusation and story. At which point, I imagine the parliamentary commission will open again. He'll lose, because if he thought he was going to win, he wouldn't have done the by-election. He'll lose, and then I'm not sure if the rules mean he can't stand, or if he then has to stand for a third time. And so in the interest of saving the British taxpayer money and keeping Nazis out of my front door, I'll be voting for Binface. Binface, by the way, if you don't know, is a sort of joke candidate. He's running quite a few elections and basically always got nothing other than a couple of votes here and there in different constituencies. But he's about to claim 20% or so of the vote in the UK, according to recent polls. He won't win, probably, but it is quite amusing that Nigel Farage is currently fighting for his life against a bin. So there's some karmic justice. What's my least favorite vegetable? Something you'd only eat for the sake of health. I don't really like bitter gourd, which is a sort of Vietnamese vegetable that's often eaten with noodles. Other than that, I quite like vegetables. I don't like aubergine or eggplant, as Americans know it, unless it's cooked with a lot of oil, because I feel like it can get quite bitter. And so I try and avoid aubergine because it's usually always doused in loads and loads of olive oil. Delicious, but not particularly helpful on a cut. Do I regret that the UK left the EU? Yes. When I was living in Spain, it caused enormous visa nightmares. And as someone who's lived in a fair few spots around the world now, I feel as a British person, I have so much in common with Europeans. My partner is a European. I like being in Europe, and they are our primary trading partner. Seems absurd to me that we are not involved in that political system. But anyhow, that's me. Cat or a dog person? Used to be a cat person. Now I have a golden retriever, and I'm thoroughly a dog person. In fact, if you're really nice and the comments are nice, and in fact, I'll tell you what, I'll make a deal. If someone comes on this call and asks, links in the chat, I'll show you my golden retriever. When does something become actual history? How long should be given until an event becomes history? That is such a good question, and I think that sort of distinction between history and journalism, I don't know. I think most historians would say that once it's not in living memory, it is history. Although I would argue that that's not true, because something like the Falklands, for instance, which is still very much in living memory, people would consider to be history. So who knows? Really thoughtful question. Don't have a great answer to it, but my feeling is that once it stops being living memory, it becomes history. Hello, Jake. Talking about politics and fascism, would you agree that people tend to become more and more radical in their political stance, both left and right? I don't know if they tend to, as in that always happens, but that definitely has happened a lot now. Again, as I said earlier, I really did, at least until 15 years ago, consider myself a centrist. And really at heart, provided that this sort of swing right is just a sort of flavor of the moment, and we return back to some equilibrium, I'll be back in the center again. But yeah, these days it seems really hard to sort of meet other centrists. People are usually really strongly on one way or the other. And you could say that it's great that people are sort of no compromises, they're following their political beliefs. But I'm really scared that we're not able to have conversations with one another anymore. We both like to do a lot of talking, but who's listening? And I say that as someone who loves to yap, and I do turn off a little bit when I hear the same talking points carped out by the same side, the side that I consider a threat to be at the moment. But when they say something new and novel, I must say I do stop and listen and try and think about it. And as much as I absolutely despise reform, I'll make no bones about that. It's not like they don't have any talking points that are worth considering. There are some arguments, some positions they take where you do have to stop and ask, hang on a minute, might they have a point here? And that's true for the other side as well. Okay, we've been finally joined. Hopefully this isn't someone just said the link's working. Hello, Texas Dust Bunny.
Hello, it's Milo. Please let us see Milo.
You want Milo? Okay, right. Give me 1 second, and I'll see if I can get him in. Milo has been requested. Milo, come here. Is he coming? He's on his way. Milo, come on. Come on. He's feeling very. Come on, you get. Come here. Good boy. For some reason, he's like really, really nervous. I don't know why. Come here.
I asked all my questions in chat, so I don't know what else to say, but I did want to see Milo.
Oh, you can see him. Oh,
he's so cute.
This is Milo. How old are you now, Milo? Are you 3 years? Oh. There we go. He's properly sat now. Milo is, I think, 3 years old now, maybe 2.5. And he's the best boy ever. I love Milo.
He's so precious. Y'all still have the cat?
No. I had the cat before I met my partner Magda, and I left it with some friends who I lived with when I moved to Thailand. It was like a house cat. It wasn't mine, especially.
How many places have you lived?
UK, so that UK, if that includes Scotland as well. Thailand, Turkey, and Spain. I didn't live in
Oh,
Turkey very long though. I was
Turkey.
there for about a month, and then I was like, okay, I'm done here. I thought about moving to Japan, but I don't think I could properly live there. But it's nice there. Where are you calling from?
America.
Yeah, whereabouts?
Yeah. Texas.
Wow, there's a lady from Texas who wanted to see you. I wish I could tell him that there are 120 people watching him.
He'd be more camera shy.
He would be. Shall I let you go? I'm gonna let him go now because I think he's a bit confused about why he's on my lap.
Well, I already asked all my questions in chat, so I won't take up more time. I just wanted to see Milo.
No worries. I'm glad someone pulled the trigger to get him in. All right. Thank you very much for your call. Oh, of course you're from Texas. The name, yeah, it's in the name. Sorry, Texas Dust Bunny. Stupidest question of the year. It's amazing how terrible you suddenly get at talking when you know you're being observed by this many people in real time because you're constantly anxious of making a silly mistake. Hence all the ums and ahs and silly questions. How do I feel about Margaret Thatcher? I mean, I actually quite like Margaret Thatcher. She's not of my time politically, so I know that she's the devil to a lot of people, and I can understand why she might be. But I can't help but find her slightly charming. Definitely girl boss energy. And my favorite fact about Margaret Thatcher was that she loved dancing. I was talking to my dad about this last night because he's a dancer. And of all the 20th century political figures who were going to sort of dip out of Washington to go to the ball for a dance, you'd never have thought it was Margaret Thatcher, would you? But she did. So yeah, those are my thoughts on Thatcher as far as it goes. Have I played any games associated or related to Assassin's Creed? So I played the first one, or maybe the second one, when I was a kid, but not since. But I hear they're still going quite strong, aren't they? But sorry, no, I haven't played any of the recent ones. Okay, who's my favorite British historian? The questioner says that theirs is Tom Holland. I also love Tom Holland. I think he's great. But I'm going to have to say mine is Anthony Beevor, who's best known for his book on Stalingrad, but he also did one on the fall of Berlin. And I think he's just amazing. Fantastic writing style, fantastic historical depth. I mean, he's a proper historian. And he does military history, which I don't really enjoy most of the time. But I just think he's got a fantastic words. Although you also can't go with Tom Holland. You can't go wrong with Tom Holland, who also, by the way, if you don't know, you can find on the Rest is History podcast, which I really wish I was in because those guys do an amazing job, and I'm so jealous that they get to just talk about history, but they are proper historians and I'm not, so they deserve it. Safania says, do you have any pets? So I'm assuming she's not seen the last 10 or 15 minutes. What countries have I traveled to? Too many to name without having to take ages to think about, but a fair bit. I'm not a huge traveler. I'm not a backpacker or anything like that. I like to sort of, because I've lived in so many different places of the world, it's been really easy to nip away for sort of weeks or weekends and see more than I guess you would be able to if you worked full time in the UK. But yeah. Someone said that I've lost them because I compared Reform to Nazis. I mean, yeah, I think that's probably true. It might be a bit of a stretch to call them literal Nazis, but it is fun to call them Nazis because I don't like them and they're on the right. So I know that's very lazy. It's very lazy indeed. So yeah, probably shouldn't be calling them just Nazis, but it's fun. Okay, I'm just trying to find the next question. I know I've yapped about politics for a while, so I'm going to try and get away from it. John36 says, does the call cost money? No, it's absolutely free. All you have to do is be respectful and just jump on. Even if you just ask a question, don't have to show your face, and have a little chat. And we can go from there. Who's my favorite actor/actress? Oh, great question. For ages, it was Christoph Waltz as the male actor because he played the dentist in Django, and he speaks like 10 languages, and he's just cool. And he always stars in films that are really dialogue heavy, and that's what I really like in films is great dialogue. Um, Actress, I'm gonna really upset everyone here. I forget her name. I think it's Elizabeth Mary Winstead. She played Ramona in Scott Pilgrim versus the World, and I had like the biggest crush on her ever when I was 16, and I watched that film probably 3 times a week. And I thought my girlfriend was going to be like Ramona. Thank God she's not, because I'm watching that film back. Ramona's not actually a very nice lady, but as a 16-year-old, I thought she was the best thing since sliced bread. If I couldn't have her, I would have the actress who plays Kim Wexler in Better Call Saul. And again, that's just because I think Kim's a fantastic character and I think she slays. But yeah, sorry, I'm not a huge actor / actress. Right, fan. Lots of Milo comments there. Any lesser known history facts I would like to share? Someone's currently homeless and living in the woods at their tent, and my video's been a highlight. Well, listen, I'm really sorry to hear that's how life's turned out for you so far. I've not been in the position that you're in, but I would tell you that the worst positions I've ever been in my life have always been before something really nice has happened. Now that might just be because you're looking for something nice, and the comparison means that whatever comes next is good. But usually, if life is here and then you hit your slump, the thing that drags you out of the slump usually leaves you higher than where you were before. So, I mean, there's no guarantee that it's going to happen in every case, but I tend to find in my sort of darkest nights that it's usually in a couple of weeks or months something will come up that will make it all have been worth it. I'm sure that you're used to these ridiculous platitudes to try and make you feel better or feel understood. So I'm sorry if that felt like I was sort of lecturing. As for any lesser known history facts, yes, the thing I find most interesting as a quick fact is that the reason that Europe was able to advance technologically so quickly and sort of take over the world was because of one invention. And you won't guess it because I didn't, and no one else I know has. It is, for those of you who might have an answer, spectacles. It's actually glasses that built the foundation for the European Enlightenment. And that's because once you give someone glasses, they don't have to stop working when they reach age 50. They can still read a ruler, they can still copy textbooks, they can still draw maps. And those sort of last 20 years, 10 years of someone's working life from 50 onwards, that's when they become a proper master. So you squeeze much more economic life out of each person, and you get they get that compounded growth of mastery. And all of a sudden your industry is just absolutely skyrocket. Interesting, isn't it? Because you wouldn't think glasses you'd think cannons or gunpowder or the compass or something, but it was it's glasses. Interesting. Tattoo sleeve and dog named Milo, both canon events are British males. That's me. What can I say? I'm sorry. I am depressingly basic. Why wouldn't I be able to live in Japan? Tattooed, overweight, bearded, white. And all of those things will make life in Japan slightly frictional. Okay, it is. Sorry, the light is disturbing your picture, so please introduce yourself.
Hey, it's Jordan from Kansas City. I wanted to tune in for you here. I'm going to mute my sound, so just so that I'm not getting feedback through your mic. I just wanted to ask a quick question.
I've got headphones. You're totally fine.
Sweet. No, I didn't want it to feedback through. Hey, so you already answered my quick question about your favorite American fact. So here's the next
America
thing.
fact.
Where was the greatest American failure? Yeah, well, I think you did. But what is our biggest failure in cooperation historically with the UK post the revolution? Possibly.
Well, I mean, I spoke about the Falklands earlier.
Any historical moment?
Yeah, America really upset the British establishment because they wouldn't help with the Falklands, and they almost sort of gave Argentina the nod that they could go ahead with it. But I would actually, I'm going to go out on a limb here and say the biggest failure from the US is the one that we're currently seeing. this is not a single issue, sort of like, oh, we just want to have an issue. We just got some diplomatic issue with this third party. It seems like the sort of playbook that's
Mhm.
defined the post Second World War era is being actively ripped up, which makes me really sad because I think America's been a force for good in the world, and I want to be part of the party.
Right, right. And I too, I agree. I think this is one of our most challenging times. So I just wanted to drop in and give you that question and say, hey, it's amazing I get to catch you live. Yeah, I'm a huge fan, and thank you for doing what you do. So
That's my absolute pleasure.
I'm gonna
Thanks for
sign off,
picking up the
but
phone.
thank you so much, sir.
My
Thanks.
pleasure. Thanks for picking up the phone, Jordan. That was Jordan from Kansas City. I remember this time. Lovely. As for all of you, if you're wondering how I managed to get there, there's a link at the bottom of the chat. Click it and you'll be here with me. Okay. Thoughts on the growing presence of Nazis on social media? Instagram and Facebook comment sections are crazy at this point. Yes, they are. It's really scary. I hope that it's not a reflection of people's everyday beliefs. I even thought about making a video on this, actually. You see a lot of clips from the Nuremberg film being sort of rearranged to make the prosecution nuts, and Hermann Goering as some kind of intellectual philosopher sort of type who was sort of sticking it to the man. And then you open the comments and it's crazy. You hear when AI could first do translations, you heard a lot of Hitler's speeches translated into English, and people would say, he's really not that bad when he was talking about the justification for the invasion of Poland. And it's like, you guys have no idea what you're talking about. It's absolutely terrifying. And I hope that it's just a couple of morons. And it's not actually part of a larger movement to try and rewrite history in a different way. But yet it is pretty spooky. I would say it's absolutely spooky. Someone says they didn't realize I had dimples. I didn't realize I had dimples either until you just said. What type of dance did Thatcher like? Don't actually know. She said, I think it was ballroom dancing, but I really couldn't be sure. Did I ever play Kingdom Come Deliverance? Yeah, for about half an hour, and then I got bored. I'm sure it gets better with more time, but I can get into it. Why did I come back to the UK? Music, family, and a desire to, I guess, spend money in the community that from the outside looking in, someone who's living away from the UK wasn't doing particularly well. Now, obviously, I'm not a millionaire or anything, but I do have a bit more cash in my pocket than I used to. And if I can spend it in small businesses and, businesses owned by family, friends, and so on, and just in general, try and contribute a little bit, then I feel like I am in some way doing the right thing. I don't have any sort of sympathy or time for people who move away from the UK in order to escape taxes and so on and so forth, taking the education and the opportunities that the UK paid for with them and not putting anything back into the pot. If you are a young person thinking of leaving the UK, I would say definitely go and get your life together, go and build that thing, go and learn that skill, go and make that dough. But once you're in a position where you could comfortably afford to come back to the UK, and the only thing stopping you from coming back is the price, then bite the bullet and come back, because we need you. There's not enough young people here who are making money and spending it. So come back, and let's try and work together and make the country something we can be proud of, rather than just spit on it and say that we hate it. On that, someone asks, am I just to move away and find a comfortable place type of guy then? I think by that, I assume you mean, do I get bored in a place and then move a lot? And the answer to that is yes, I definitely do. But I think I probably will stay here now. Given the choice of anyone in the world, who would I want as a dinner guest? Oof, dead or alive? Dead only, George Orwell, I think. I've mentioned him before. He's the only one I can think of, really, that I think I would have enough in common with and the shared language to chat with. if it couldn't be George Orwell, it'd have to be the late great Christopher Hitchens, who had a massive impact on me as a child. Although I engage with less now, but I think he's a fantastic orator and had a huge influence on my speaking style and writing style. Is UK food really bland and tasteless? If you eat out, it is, but go to the average UK home and you'll be fed well. And it really depends on whether or not they're buying quality ingredients. You can get fantastic ingredients here in the UK and they taste amazing. And that's why UK food is traditionally rather simple in preparation, because it emphasizes the quality of the ingredients that we can produce here. But cheap ingredients cooked badly will always taste bad, and the UK has plenty of it. Would I say that Asian countries in the Middle Ages were more cruel with punishments than Europe was? No, not especially. I don't think so. Maddie Muggle says, where is the link? I'll give a quick question. The link is in the chat and it's pinned at the bottom. Have I seen Pluribus? I guess this is a reference to Kim Wexler. Yes, I have, but I didn't like it as much as Better Call Saul. In the event of war against Britain, do you believe that British would go out to fight for their homeland in 2026? To go out and fight, I think possibly not. But if Britain were to come under direct attack, I should imagine we would. I just can't see that happening by virtue of being an island. It would be much easier just to bomb the shit out of us than to try and actually get in here and occupy the territory. Have I read any of Adrian Goldworthy's books, especially his biography of Julius Caesar, which I believe is called Life of a Colossus? No, I haven't. I tried to get Life of a Colossus as an audiobook, but couldn't find it. It was at a time when I was unable to sit and read. But if you recommend them, I shall come back round and have another look. Favorite thing to cook? Favorite thing to cook? I like cooking pasta. I don't like eating pasta that much. But I kind of like building the sauce in the pan. I like taking the pasta out just the right moment, a little bit of starchy water in the pan. You can toss that pan around and sort of try and get the starch and the fats and the water emulsified so that it becomes lovely and sort of light and creamy and indulgent. I love the little swirl of olive oil and the topping of Parmesan. Cooking pasta is a real pleasure. Eating pasta is also fun, but not quite as fun as cooking it. Have I ever seen or met any of the royal family in person? Not from the English royal family, but I did have a member of the Thai royal family stop me once. I was in the far south of Thailand. It was actually one of my first dates with my partner, Magda. And it was, I forget the name of the festival, but it was a sort of lantern festival. But in this area of southern Thailand, there were no foreigners, like none. This is a city of maybe 500,000 people. There might have been 100 or 200 foreigners. So me and Magda were in this park, and a member of the Thai royal family had turned up. And because we stood out like a sore thumb, he approached us and asked where we were from. Now, I must say, I've never met a royal before, and I never really thought there was anything to royalty. But this man had clearly been raised in that ilk and had been raised in a world where people sort of stopped when he spoke. And he had such a, I don't know which one it was, but there was such a grace in his movements. Clearly because he was just used to the fact that he could move at his own pace, walk where he pleased, spoke in the tone that he pleased, and you know, the world would have to sort of live with it. But I could understand why people from the past would have thought monarchs were sort of almost godly, because there was a complete difference. It was almost like he wasn't quite mortal, even though he clearly was. So that's my only ever rub with a royal. How do I join the Flashback team? I have a history degree. My dissertation was the bureaucracy of death in the First World War. James, there will be an email link in the channel description. Follow that, ping something over. I'm guessing you want to be a writer. I'm not taking any writers at the moment, but one day I might be. So ping that over and it'll be handy to have it. English breakfast is undefeated. Yes, of course, it is the best breakfast in the world. Anyone who's skeptical of British food should have a full English breakfast. They're absolutely delicious. The only problem is they're about 1,500 calories a piece, and you won't be moving for the next 2 weeks. I have a 4-bar cooking channel just for fun. Originally, that was actually something I wanted to do, but I'm not very good at plating, and so the thumbnails wouldn't be particularly attractive. Which historical event would you attempt to stop if possible, even though there could be severe future consequences? I'm going to skip that question for very obvious reasons. Because there are loads to. I think there are. Oh, God knows. You've got to pick something that is not just the worst in the moment, but the worst thing for all of human history. I'm gonna leave the Second World War alone, and I'm gonna say, wouldn't it be lovely if the Library of Alexandria hadn't burned down? Because I think we lost quite a lot there, and all of the sort of classics that we wrestle with, like Plato and Aristotle, the foundations of the Western intellectual tradition, I think are just a little bit of the full picture of history, of the history of intellectual work. So if we had more of that, maybe that would be good, or maybe it would be terrible because we'd have too much to read and we couldn't go anywhere. You know, limitations breed creativity. Humans can only really deal with 1 or 2 ideas at a time. So who knows? Do you agree with the modern monarchy being a raging lefties? I'm not. No, I don't. I don't know. I don't know anything about the modern royal family's political beliefs. Really, I know that William is a bit of an environmentalist, and that Harry can't seem to stay out the press, despite wanting to stay out the press. I don't know. I honestly don't know. It's not a question for me. I don't really follow the royals very much. How big is the Flashback History team? Me, John, Matea, Ollie, and Christian. But Christian sort of only comes in for special projects. Christian is a much better editor than me. And so he comes in when I need a bit of help, but he doesn't work full time with Flashback. But then I've also got another channel called Darkest Chapters, which Ollie writes for. An old friend Ben writes for sometimes, and Christian edits. And then I've got another editor called Rich, who actually plays drums with me in one of the bands here. So I don't know how many that is. Oh, plus there's a guy that helps me with thumbnails. It's fairly big now, but most people are contractors. In fact, all of them are contractors or freelance. So to call them a team in the sense that we all come to work every day and rub shoulders would be a little bit of a lie. But we try and meet as much as we can, especially me and John, because we are the sort of intellectual and the sort of soul of the content sits there with the work that John does and what I sort of terms to go in and look at and what I think you guys might like. Any progress of the cello? For those who don't know, I was talking about my cello about a year ago. I got one for my 30th birthday. No progress whatsoever. As soon as I got back to the UK, I put the cello back in its box, pulled out the bass guitar and got to work. So the cello hasn't been touched. It's getting a bit dusty, actually. I might have to sell it. Which unanswered question in history would you most like to know? I mean, if we can move out of the realm of human history, I would love to know about the origin of the universe. But again, for those who've just joined us, because at the moment I'm reading this. This is astrophysics. My camera's backwards. So I'm thinking a lot more about the physical world now rather than the human historical world. To answer your question on human history, I suppose there was the Bronze Age collapse, which was a period in which most civilizations just sort of went tits up. No one really knows why. The best argument we have is the systems collapse theory, but because there wasn't much sort of writing at the time, we don't know if that's our best answer. So something like that would be quite interesting, just to figure out what happened there. But I think this is the systems collapse theory, the idea that there was sort of natural disasters, famine, drought, invasions from the so-called sea peoples all at once, is probably the best answer. What kind of music does my band play? So I've got two bands. One is a Busted tribute. I'm not a huge Busted fan, but they were already had gigs and were playing, and it was work. I actually quite like Busted now. What I didn't realize was how many Busted fans are out there, which is insane. The other one is a sort of pub covers band, but it's just me and a drummer, and so I run my bass through two different amps to make one bit sound like a guitar and one bit sound like a bass, a bit like Royal Blood or the White Stripes do. And we just do pub covers really, but usually in the style of sort of pop punk and metal, but in a way that's accessible to anyone. I will be the second band right now. I'm producing the promo for. Once that's ready, I will say something on this channel about it just to get people watching. Okay, Rosie would like to change her question about royal. So she said, am I a royalist despite my left-leaning views? Yes, I am a royalist, but in the weakest possible sense of the word. So, constitutional monarchies tend to be the most stable forms of government, and it stops Parliament from being unanswerable to any higher power. But because the monarch can't exercise his power without essentially destroying the institution of monarchy, it's a kind of our current political system, the monarchy works as a kind of break in case of emergency button. So they can only use that power once, and if they use it at the wrong time, it will end very, very badly. But should a dictator or someone who's, let's going to say, being fast and loose with the rules, decide that they don't want to play by that rule book anymore, the monarch does have the power to swoop in and do something, but only if the rest of the people in the political establishment agree with them. So it's a kind of fail-safe measure. Am I a royalist in the sense that I follow who they marry and what they do and what they've said in their latest press release and look at Kate Middleton's Christmas video? No, these things don't interest me at all. But I do think that the institution of monarchy as a kind of democratic handrail isn't to be slept on. Favorite philosophical question? Is there any such thing? Is there such a thing as a legitimate government? Or is all governments just powerful people telling weaker people what to do? I instinctually think that there is such a thing as a legitimate government. But at the same time, when you dig into it, you realize that most of our political institutions through history ultimately originate with someone who had a bigger stick clumping someone who had a smaller one. The fact that our political roots lie there, though, doesn't mean that the whole system is rotten and can't improve. And I think this is why I like Thomas Hobbes so much, who I started this episode talking about. Do a video on Richard III, maybe about how he wasn't a villain, especially compared to Henry VIII. Yeah, Richard III was a bastard. He was not very nice. We'll see. I know there are a ton of theories already, and apologies if you covered that already, but have you done a Jack the Ripper theory? Yes, I have. His name was, forgotten now, but there's a video on it. I think he was Polish. Okay. We've got 15 minutes left. I've got a few more to get through. I will be calling it at 2 hours. Again, for anyone still here, if you want to jump on the call and ask me a question, there's a link in the chat. It's the pinned message. So click it and you'll be in here and you can talk to me. Jake, if you wanted to create as much chaos as possible, which historical figure remembered positively would you turn evil? That's such a good question. Ooh. Well, I think all political figures are evil to someone. I mean, Winston Churchill's a great example, right? Because there are lots of people who feel like he was the one who stood against the Nazis and saved Britain from tyranny. But there are others who say that he was a racist and a Nazi, a nasty pig. So, like in my mind, Winston Churchill is overwhelmingly seen as good, but in the comments, I see a lot of people see him as evil. So, and I think that's because he's a political figure. So you'd have to pick someone who didn't rustle any feathers. You'd have to pick a goodie, wouldn't you? So you're probably in the world of science, like Copernicus. But then if he was evil, would that mean that he was any less effective? I mean, Isaac Newton wasn't very nice, but I mean, okay, obviously. All right, maximum chaos, assuming he's a historical figure. I think he is. Maximum possible chaos, Jesus Christ, right? That I think you just turn the moral world upside down. Yeah, if you want absolute chaos, say that Jesus Christ was evil and make everyone believe it. And yeah, I think that would end absolutely terribly. Great question. That's the best question of the day today, and I'm very grateful. Fantastic. I really enjoyed thinking about that one. Thank you. What's the one question you wish someone would ask, but no one ever does? Nah, I don't. I've not had an. I don't wish for questions. I'm not hoping someone asks for a specific thing. Usually, halfway through reading the question, you realize whether or not you're going to enjoy answering it. And I must say again, that last question was an absolute banger. Favorite alt history film / series? I don't know what alt history means. I hope you mean fictional history rather than alternative history. And I don't watch many alt history series, but if I had to pick my favorite series in history, it would be Rome, which actually got me into history in the first place. Rome is by HBO's Rome is fantastic, absolutely amazing. Was World War I more brutal than World War II, combat-wise, not civilian casualties? I don't think so. My gut feeling is that World War II was far more brutal when you think about the campaigns in the Pacific and the campaigns in Eastern Europe. Would you rather fight in World War II than World War I? Probably, even though like you might end up with some pretty brutal hand-to-hand fighting in Stalingrad or at the end of some bayonet in Burma. Daily life was not quite as challenging as it was for soldiers in the trenches. And usually, you would die pretty quickly during trench warfare because you either went over the top and got shredded, or you got hit by an artillery shell and were bombed. And of course, you might have had an infection or something like that, but that would have happened all throughout history anyway during that time. So that's my best guess, but I'm answering quite quickly now. Last question. From this individual, what are my thoughts on resets and humanity reaching its peak 12,000 years ago? I think this theory based on the skill of ancient architecture. Balderdash, don't buy into it at all. I think that humans have never been more advanced than they are now. If there was a golden age, it was the late 20th century. Krasinski, I think it was Krasinski or Kaczynski. Sorry, someone just put the name of Jack the Ripper in the comments. Dwight D. Eisenhower building the nukes. Not sure what that comment is related to. FDR commissioned the bomb. Truman dropped it. Truman is, by the way, a terribly underrated American politician. I really think Truman does not get enough love. Would I consider changing my voice? My wife is okay. I will not be changing my voice if your spouse can't handle herself around it. It might be on you to stop putting it on when she's in the room. When am I going to stream again after this one? Well, this is the thing, right? I really enjoyed this. I had a great idea. I had a great time. And this morning I really wanted to do it just to connect with you guys again after being away for the summer. I would do this like every other week. The question is, will you tune in? I think if it's rare, then people will come in and watch. And if it's not rare, then, it happens every week, then people won't feel compelled to tune in. And I'll just be sat here talking to 5 commenters. So I don't know. Maybe I'll give it another go in a month. We'll see if we get the same sort of reaction. But I really enjoy this, and I really love the opportunity to connect with you, which is why I also gave you the comment to come into the room and talk to me. But it seems that you're all a little bit shy. Do a bucket list. If you do, what's on it? Not much. Not much, really. I think bucket lists are a little bit of a waste of time. If there's something you really want to do, you better get on with it. There's no sense sticking it on a list and sort of getting to it once you get some awful diagnosis, or you're too weak or poorly to enjoy yourself. If there's something you really want to do, get cracking. Someone says they got into history by wondering, how did we get here and why is it like this? And then asks, what got me into history, or do I just find it interesting? So how did we get here? Why is it like this? It's probably the best argument for history you could possibly make. It's the only explanation. I mean, if the comedian David Mitchell says that, if you walked into a room and Uncle Harry was dancing on the table naked and there was poo on the floor and all the chairs were upside down and the ceiling was dripping in custard, you would absolutely want to know what happened 15 minutes ago. You want the history. That's the only way to explain this absolutely unbelievable scene in front of your eyes. And that's really all history does. And that's what it's for. And it helps us to, in some sense, I don't want to say predict, but to try and foresee the risks that previously went unaddressed, let's say. That's the real argument of history. When I tried to study history, I tried to study it with that mindset, but I actually struggled to find it interesting from there. As for how I actually got into history, it was quite by accident. I finished my degree in philosophy. I wanted to be a lecturer in philosophy, but I didn't want to do 4 years more study with no promise of work at the end of it and become a sort of PhD barista. So I wanted to be a teacher. I thought I wanted to be a lecturer of philosophy because I want to teach and I want to continue talking about these things and thinking about them all the time. So I'll just go and be a teacher and do that. And granted, it's kids, not just not young adults who want to learn, but it's something. And I wanted to teach English literature, but they said that because my degree was in philosophy and politics, I was better suited to teach history or RE. It's very hard to get a job as an RE teacher because very few schools employ them. Anyone who's got a job teaching religious education keeps it. So I chose history, and I fell in love with it from there. But it was quite by accident. It was not pre-planned by any means whatsoever. Again, many many very blushing comments and compliments here. I'm trying to get through to another question. Let's see. Someone says they're scared of my majestic presence. Good, you should be. I am a terrifying figure. No, just kidding. If I could see any historical monuments destroyed or standing, what would it be? I'm going to have to pass. I can't think of anything off the top of my head. So yeah, I'm sorry. I just don't happen. RE is religious education, for those asking. Why do we never learn from history? Good question. Because we all keep drawing different lessons from it, I suppose, probably the best answer. Maybe in my next live stream, I could include an option to send a tip or a super chat. Really, no need. This is for fun. I am not here to make money today. The videos that you guys watch makes just enough as you are, and the Patreons help me a long way. Please do not feel compelled to send me random gifts and tips. I appreciate that you just want to show how much you love the channel. And of course, they're always nice when they come in, but I hate the thought that someone who needs that money is sending it to me instead of using it for them, because they may really need it. And there was a time where I really needed it. And this is not one of those times, as much as I really appreciate the gesture of kindness. Okay, I'm going to call it there because I've really run out of questions and I'm more sort of getting into comments and And ridiculous compliments, channel 6846. I'm looking at you and your wife's comments. So yeah, I'll finish on this last question. Would I ever consider teaching if YouTube doesn't prove a long career? What's next for me? If YouTube does die, I'm not sure what I'll do next, but I don't think I'll go back to the classroom. I might try my best to skimp a living out of music again, or maybe try and use this short-lived clout that I've got to leverage and sort of move into some other media space. I would like to continue in the sort of working with ideas and thinking about history and communicating with others. That would be amazing if I could make this last forever. But I really don't know. My gut feeling is, and this is part of what I was speaking about the summer, is I think at some point with AI, the nature of YouTube and sort of internet entertainment is going to change. And what worked for me when I started and what's working right now might not work. And I'm going to have to come back to this channel with a lot of new ideas and a lot of new passion and a lot of ways to make it interesting and exciting again and stand out against future competition. And that's why I'm sort of taking a little bit of more time for myself and sort of allowing the team to step in and do a bit more work so that I have time to do other things like go to the gym and play music and just get excited about life, so that when the time comes that I need to get back and sort of stand behind the steering wheel, I've got all of the willpower and energy and excitement to be there and do something interesting. So fingers crossed I won't have to think about life after YouTube, or at least life after this kind of work. But if that day does come, then I shall cross that bridge when I come to it. Unfortunately, as many a YouTuber has learnt the hard way, this is not necessarily guaranteed forever. Okay, there are some more questions that have come in while I answered this, and I've got 3.5 minutes. So I'm going to quick fire them. Best way to learn history: however you find it most interesting and engaging. If you like books, read books. If you like lectures, listen to lectures. If you like documentaries, watch documentaries. Whatever you like, if you want to learn history, do that, because you won't get bored of it and you won't put it down when you get bored. What do I think is an appropriate age for children to learn the darker parts of history? Good question. I'm not an expert. I would probably say 14 to 15, but it really depends on the constitution of the child. Sorry, I'm not a sort of developmental psychologist, but I would say if your child seems to be able to handle it, then the earlier the better, because people should really know what we can do when we lose sight of the big picture. Any chance we could get an episode on the US election system companies and the certificating companies history-wise? They were split from tons of antitrust issues. Don't know anything about it. I'll have a look. If it seems interesting, I'll give it a go. Do you play the outro music of the channel yourself? No, I do not. That is a song called Magic Show by Kissing Candice. But I may well record something to put at the end of the music, to put at the end of the videos too. That is all for questions. I know, okay, I'll get this last one in. Will I make a correlation video? It messes with their mind that the Wild West coincided with the Victorian era and other times. Yeah, it is really, really shocking. Yeah, I'll think about it. I'm not sure I could sell it as an individual standalone video, but I'll think about it. What's my fav videos of mine and why? Episode 1 of the New Japan documentary, because I wrote it, I filmed it, well, with Magda's help. I wrote it, I think about filming it, I filmed it with Magda in Japan, and I edited it after. And it's one of the few pieces of work that I've done this year that's all me. And as much as I appreciate the hard work that my team do and the fact that they are probably much better than me in a lot of ways, it's really nice to take full creative ownership of something like I did at the beginning. Even if it's not technically as good, it is very satisfying to know that you did something that you think was good. And I hope you guys think it was good too. Yes, viewership is lower than usual, as always in summer. Again, it's why I've been posting slightly less. Right, guys, that is absolutely all. Please don't type any more questions in, because I really want to sign off and I just can't say no to a good question. I always get a bit soppy now at the end of Q&As with the sort of big thank yous and the amazing pats on the back for you guys. But seriously, this wouldn't be possible if you didn't engage and watch, and I wouldn't take it anywhere near as serious as I do if it wasn't for you. I have never met any of you, but seriously, I do. I really love you guys. You're amazing. You're amazing. I couldn't do this without you. Literally wouldn't be able to. And I will forever be grateful. So that's all for now. Oh God, I got a bit teary then. That's insane, isn't it? I say it every single time we do a Q&A, but it never fails to move me. Right, I will go before I embarrass myself any further. Have a wonderful summer, guys. There's still a month left of it. And I'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye.